We can go a little deeper and little deeper. And then next will be the planning. All right, how are you going to do that? How are you going to create that? What is the strategy? So that's often where I start. After that, absolutely anything could happen because I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. It depends on who's in front of me and what comes up. I just did a coaching session with a guy. He spaced on that. We were having a session, so he hadn't done his preparation. And what came out of it as we're talking was he doesn't feel in the driver's seat at work or at home. And him missing a coaching call is just an example. It was a symptom of that. So it brought out a beautiful conversation. And now he's got a couple of exercises he can do to practice to get more in the driver's seat in his own life. Because I said, if you're not showing up for your call with me, where else in your life are you not showing up? And he was like, wow, well, let's start with my marriage. So it got deep really fast.
How do you get to that level of depth? Because sometimes people, like if you did the magic wand question, they might have some kind of bad goal, for example, right? Because I think that there are goals that can be bad, or that the timeline's not right, or that it's not rooted in a good place. It's kind of rooted from something different, something not from the heart. How do you get to a good goal setting kind of session with somebody?
Well, I'll make the point that I don't care so much what the goals are. I care about my client's relationship to the goals. How do they feel about it? And if the goals are hitting me as boring and dry, then I'll poke. And here's a question someone asked me last year in my men's group. He said, David, what would have you celebrate your ass off? And that stopped me in my tracks. And I took 2 weeks to sit with that question because I could think of things I wanted. I want a home entertainment system, and I'd like a partnership, and there's different things I wanted. But what would have me do the happy dance and want to call all my friends? That was a confronting question. So that's one way I might take someone deeper if I'm not buying that they're enrolled in their own goals. Another question I've just started asking. So if someone listens to this interview and they decide they want to get on a call with me and see if we'd be a fit, there's some prep to do before we get on the call. And one of the questions I just added was, if you had 6 months to live, what would you spend that 6 months doing? That shows me a lot about their values and what they care about. And then if their goals don't match what I've read in that answer, I might poke a little bit more and say, well, you mentioned you want to spend more time with your kids. I don't see that on your goals list. You mentioned you would travel more, or you'd be volunteering or being of service or whatever. I don't see that here. And so I might get to do a bit more prodding.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. What would get you to really celebrate? And when I was thinking, as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking of what that is for me. And it is a great question. I think it wouldn't do it justice to sit with that any less than a couple days, because I think that really puts you in a position. It shows your values too. So like what I was immediately thinking was some type of like award or some kind of, cool like recognition. Well, it shows a lot about my personality too. Like I want this kind of recognition at some level. Well, that tells me a lot about myself and a lot about other people. Somebody else might just be cool with some other kind of happy dance thing, right? So it's really interesting. It got me as you were discussing that, I'm thinking that in my head, wow, this is teaching me not only what a good goal could be, but a lot about myself and what I value.
Exactly. And that's where I get excited. I want to know about the person. I want them to know themselves. You'd think we should know ourselves because we live with ourselves all the time, but it's a whole journey. So that question, what would have me celebrate my ass off, is a big one. And I want to double click on that other one. If you had 6 months to live, I've addressed this 3 times in my life. Once when I was 27, I said, what would I do if I had 6 months to live? If I had 6 months and could do anything I wanted. And when I was 27, the answer was, I'd like to be a professional entertainer at the ski fields. I'd like to play guitar and sing for pubs and parties and put on a black afro wig and sing Blame It on the Boogie, and put on a blonde ABBA wig and sing SOS and entertain the crowd. So I did. I quit my consulting job, went back to Australia, and I spent 1.5 years as an entertainer. The second time was about 10 years ago, and the answer was I'd go to Bali. I'd spend my time in Bali because it was my favorite place I ever visited. So instead of spending 6 months there, I just thought, I'll just go for a month or two and see how it feels. Well, it felt so good that I came back to the States, sold everything I had, and just moved with 2 suitcases to Bali and spent 2 or 3 years learning Balinese and playing ultimate frisbee and video games. And this is what I did with my life for 3 years out of that question. And then more recently, I've asked myself the same thing. And I think the answer is I'd like to go and do a really deep, in-depth acting training in Los Angeles and live the life of an actor. I want to do that. So this is a great question, listener. If I had 6 months to live, what would I do? Doesn't mean you have to go and do it right now, but it might tell you something about yourself. And it might be that you don't want to wait 2, 5, 10, 20 years to get around to it, because we never really know how long we have.